Secretary Redding. Thank you for being here this afternoon. It's always good to see you. And
likewise, thank you.
I appreciate the chocolate milk on the table there with you. As the mother of a collegiate swimmer, I can tell you there's no better recovery beverage than chocolate milk. So, and speaking of the dairy industry, I was recently speaking to one of my constituents who owns a dairy farm that also sells ice cream. And he was reaching out to me because apparently there's a $35 dessert license on the books through the Department of Agriculture. And he said, you know, I already pay for numerous fees and licenses for a host of other things due to the fact that he not only produces milk and milk products on his farm, but he also sells his dairy products there on the farm. So I had reached out to the department and they were exceedingly helpful with getting us the information that we needed to respond to him. And they let me know that manufacturers of frozen desserts are governed by the frozen dessert law, and this section of the law requires manufacturers to obtain a license and pay that $35. And apparently it's a regulation that goes back on the books since 1970. And your staff let me know that the Bureau of Food Safety is currently working on revising or rescinding elements of the frozen dessert regulations since they are so old and out of date. And I'm hoping that you could let me know what the status is of the revision or elimination and where they are in the process. And I also think there may be an IRC meeting recently where they may have addressed this. So can you talk about the frozen dessert regulations?
No, I was hoping you were working your way through the. You're spot on, right? Because we have talked about it internally about it's no longer needed. We're going to rescind that. I can't tell you today exactly whether it's gone to IRC and that hearing's been held, but our intention is to eliminate that requirement of the licensing and to rescind that regulation.
Fantastic, and I'm always happy to hear that we're getting rid of things on our books that don't make sense. So I thank you for that. One of the other issues, and Senator Blake touched on it briefly, were the complaints that many of us received with regard to the governor's commercial travel ban. And when Pima was here, I asked them to walk us through the process that determines these shutdowns, because this is a relatively new policy, and it's been a significant change. And what I'm hearing from food processors in New York County. Obviously, we're the snack capital of the world, and many of our snack food manufacturers were impacted not only with their ability to move products out, but to bring food materials in to make to process and make those snacks. But I'm also hearing from my colleague out in Blair County, Senator Ward, that milk haulers are really struggling, and that this has been a significant problem for them as well. So, Pima indicated that this is a maturing process, that they understand that it's impacting many segments of industry. And, they said that they would be in the process of finalizing or refining this policy soon, and that they would be sharing it with us. So because there are really specific concerns with regard to agriculture and the movement of agricultural products, have you at the department had any input on this process that Pima is going through with regard to when and how we ban commercial vehicles on our roads?
Yeah, Senator, thank you. And we've talked to a lot of the motor freight companies and trucking firms, and particularly on the milk side. I mean, that's probably been most vocal about it. Part of it is the change in process. But the short answer is yes, we've been in those conversations, trying to inform that. I think that Secretary Richards is right. It's a maturing process and discussion. There have been some important lessons learned in terms of communication, and I think on the very first time that this was activated, concerns about what the firms knew and when did they know that. We've all sort of watched the news and with some concern about traffic and safety, and I think it's an abundance of caution that the decisions are made. But it's being refined. I mean, I would say that there are refinement even from the first decision to the most recent, but we'll continue to stay in that conversation.
And I appreciate that you have that input because you uniquely understand what the agricultural industry faces. Do you have anything that we can take back to our food processors and our farmers with regard to what's happening?
Well, I would just say that we continue to have that conversation. It is not closed, right? Conversations continue with PEMA and PennDOT and state police. We've tried to be sensitive to more specific routes and restrictions on certain roads versus some of the statewide experiences we had initially. We've tried to, with the dairy industry particularly, is to think about in advance of these storms and the notices that we get to be a little more pre-positioned than we are. And I know exactly what I'm saying when I say it, that's hard to do. But it's knowing that if we're headed into some of those severe, particularly region-wide, is to pre-position at least trailers places that you can access. But it continues to evolve. I would just say to him, it's not a closed conversation, but we struggle with how to find the equilibrium between the safety and concern for the citizens and the suppliers, food suppliers.